Of all North Carolina's attractions, its beaches are the most popular destination to both residents and visitors alike. Amongst these beaches, Kure Beach offers a particularly interesting history. Kure Beach is located on Pleasure Island, just south of Wilmington, North Carolina, and nestled in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Cape Fear River. Pleasure Island's proximity to the ocean and the heavily traveled Cape Fear River to the port city of Wilmington has made it a hotbed for historic events. On the south end of Pleasure Island lies the remains of Fort Fisher, the last Confederate fort to fall in the Civil War, now a historical site that draws thousands of visitors every year. However, a truly fascinating piece of Kure Beach history is one that often goes unnoticed by visitors, a historical site that has long since disappeared. After the Wright brothers' flight at Kitty Hawk, the most important technological event in North Carolina was the Ethyl-Dow chemical plant built at Kure Beach to extract the element bromine from the seawater. Previous to the Ethyl-Dow plant's construction, the Dow Chemical Company had successfully extracted bromine from brine wells in Michigan. At the time, bromine was required in large quantities as ethylene dibromide to reduce engine knock and increase efficiency of leaded gasoline. Without the ethylene dibromide, lead deposits formed in the engine, shutting them down after only a few hours of operation. Demand for bromine increased as production of gasoline-powered cars and airplanes continued to rise. The Dow Chemical Company, in order to maintain supply for an increased demand, looked to extract bromine from a far more accessible source. In 1931, a merger between the Dow Chemical Company and the Ethyl Corporation was formed to create the first of its kind plant to extract bromine from seawater in Kure Beach, North Carolina. On August 9, 1933, plans for the Ethyl-Dow plant were announced. The plant was a huge undertaking for its time. With over $3.5 million invested, it was the largest commercial development in the Wilmington area since the shipyards were built. The building required over 1,500 construction workers, 3.5 million bricks, and 38 miles of electrical wiring. The plant construction alone bolstered the local economy of a town still under the effects of the Great Depression. During its construction, engineers utilized an existing Civil War trench dug in 1865 for the foundation of an aqueduct, as well as utilized a natural Carolina bay on the interior of Kure Beach as a holding bay for seawater. After its completion 5 months later, on January 1934, the plant covered 310 acres and stretched from the ocean front about a mile north of the Kure Beach Pier all the way across the island to the Cape Fear River, intersecting modern-day Dow Road. Some of the buildings stood over 4 stories tall, skyscrapers in comparison to the local dwellings and topography. Unlike other companies at the time, Ethyl-Dow was extremely forthcoming to the public of its operation process. The bromine extraction method used by the plant covered the entire B section of the April 1, 1934 edition of the Wilmington Star newspaper. The plant also gained national recognition by gracing the covers of Atlantic Coastline News, Scientific America, and Modern Mechanics, who speculated the plant could extract gold from seawater. The Ethyl-Dow plant, as mentioned before, was at the forefront of technology. Separating the bromine from the ocean water began with seawater being pumped through a 200-foot intake pipe into a settling basin 112 feet long, 76 feet wide, and 12 feet deep. The settling basin was actually a natural Carolina bay located at the site that provided ideal for this purpose. Then the water passed through a series of treatment chambers. In the first, a 10% sulfuric acid solution was added. Next, chlorine was blown through the water by enormous fans in blowing out towers. The blowing out towers were 40 feet high and hundreds of feet wide. The water was then poured down from the towers in a fan-shaped shower, sprayed with air, then sprayed with a soda ash solution, precipitating a bromine solution, which was then pumped off into the ethylene dibromide building. Treated water was then released into the Cape Fear River. It took roughly 7.5 tons of ocean water to produce 1 pound of bromine. The plant hit peak production during World War II, where the plant could process 30 million gallons of seawater a day, yielding 1,600 pounds of ethylene dibromide in order to appease the military's demand of enriched fuel for aviation. The plant's pivotal role in the war may have actually drawn the attention of the enemy. Around 1 a.m. on the morning of July 25, 1943, panic struck the town of Kure Beach as rumored reports spread of a German U-boat off the coast firing 5 shells at the Ethyl-Dow Plant, which all missed and landed in the Cape Fear River. In 1946, the demand for ethylene dibromide plummets due to the war ending, and the plant was forced to shut down. A majority of the plant's parts were scavenged by local business, leaving behind the ruins of a once prosperous plant. In 1951, the military ocean terminal Sunny Point was built across the Cape Fear River a few miles upstream of Southport, North Carolina. An additional 2,100 acres was set aside on Carolina, Kure, and Fort Fisher beaches as a buffer zone for the facility. The remains of the Ethyl-Dow processing plant fall within this buffer zone, where over the years they have been consumed by the local vegetation. On the ocean side of the Ethyl-Dow plant, the original intake facility and intake pipes still exist, buried under sand and the surf. In 2011, efforts began by the city to remove the existing structure and intake pipe from the beachfront in the wake of 2 injuries due to the hidden obstructions in the water. The town is currently applying for funding to remove the hazards, but as for right now, signs are posted warning swimmers and surfers of the underwater hazard. Aside from the health impacts associated with underwater debris and decrepit buildings, the health and environmental effects of ethylene dibromide seem to be negligible. While exposure to ethylene dibromide is extremely toxic, it only has a half-life of 40 days. For the 13 years the Ethyl-Dow plant was in service, the ocean sustained it, granting the plant economic prosperity and national recognition. However, the same element that brought its success ultimately brought its demise, as it disappeared underneath the sands and the surf after a series of storms and hurricanes.